This is BSB Ray from the One Truth Forum, and today we're going to be interviewing Sylvie from the New Earth channel. And it's going to be a little bit unusual the way we're going to do it because Sylvie had concerns that her internet connection might not be strong enough to have a live chat over Skype. So what we did was we sent her the questions in advance, and she went ahead and recorded the answers. She recorded the answers, but she didn't record the questions themselves. So I'm going to go through and record the questions and put them in between her answers. Before we get into the questions, I want to actually give some background on what Sylvie's videos are about for people who've never seen them before. Sylvie posts videos on historical or alternative historical narratives. And what we're talking about here is a major revision of history as we understand it and as it's taught in universities and understood by most academics. I say most academics because there actually are some scholars who are on board with what Sylvie's saying. So this isn't something that she's just coming out with on her own and going against everybody in the field. This is actually something that chronologists have been discussing for hundreds of years already. But in modern times it's been taken up primarily by a man named Anatoly Fomenko, who is a professor at Moscow State University. He's a mathematician. His problem that he's created for historians is that he's applied statistics to history, and he's come up with some things that historians are very uncomfortable with. Fomenko's work in particular is summed up in 7 volumes that he's put out, and a lot of this is online on his own website, which is chronologia.org, and I recommend anybody interested in this to read Fomenko's work, and I'll post a link to that in the video description below. Another well-known scholar who came to the same conclusion from a different perspective was Immanuel Velikovsky. Like Fomenko, he also became convinced that conventional chronology as we understand it has been skewed by the duplication of historical narratives. If you want to find Velikovsky's work on this, it's available online if you look for it. It's called Ages in Chaos by Immanuel Velikovsky. It was published in 1952, so this is prior to Fomenko's work. But what I want to get at here is that Sylvie's videos are following a tradition of work that's been going on for some time. She comes at it from a different angle as Fomenko and Velikovsky and the others who I haven't mentioned, but her work is in that same tradition. Sylvie has 40-some videos on her New Earth channel now on YouTube. A lot of them are over an hour long, and there's a lot of content to them. So if you want to really start digging into the details of the new chronology and these types of things, then that would be a great place to start. So now we're going to get into the questions that Sylvie answered. So the first question that we asked her was what inspired the name of her channel, New Earth? And this is her response.
I feel the need of radical change, the way humanity does everything and relates to the world around. I believe that the human race can do much better. It can live on a beautiful planet in a peaceful way. The New Earth that I'm referring to is the same planet, but without wars and without pollution. And the planet that is populated by a much more intelligent type of humans than us. I mean, as a general level, some highly evolved and self-aware souls are walking the earth even right now. But those are more of an exception still. On the New Earth, such are the common men.
The second question is, can you give a brief summary of the historical big picture as you currently see it?
The very basic concept that we're some sort of a progressing civilization that is discovering technology and all kinds of things needs serious revision. Plenty of evidence is there that more advanced cultures have been walking the earth before us. And not only that, definitely there seems to be a continuity. Their knowledge was not completely lost. Some of it survived and placed the bedrock of our technological so-called inventions. Actually, they are either rediscoveries or, in many cases, knowledge finally made public. And the Survivor series is an attempt to see how, when and how was this link carried out in reality. I'm sure I got some of the details wrong. Nobody can get it all right from the very first attempt, but I do believe that the general concept is correct.
What's the difference between Atlantis, Hyperborea, and Lemuria, and how exactly do these civilizations or cultures relate to the survivors?
My only trustworthy source of information regarding what is usually called Lemuria are the set books of Jane Roberts. I believe that they are genuine and authentic and truthful channeled material. I have mentioned why in some of the previous videos, and we'll talk much more about it in the future, why I trust them. But the story goes like this. The Lumanians, as Seth calls them, did some genetic manipulations of their group, their civilization, and that proved to be a failure. As more and more of them started realizing that this is the case, they simply went out in the open because they usually lived in tunnels underground, and intermarried, started living together with the cavemen, those cavemen that we hear about in the official history. They were far more technologically advanced than us and resided in a tunnel system mainly in the area of Africa and Australia, although outposts were there all over, especially according to Seth in the area of Spain. He doesn't mention that the Lumanians brought any technology to the cavemen, but they only contributed, it seems, to a bit of a mixture in the gene pool of the cavemen. While on the other hand, the heritage from Atlantis and Hyperborea seems to be much stronger, and probably not probably, according to him, they are in a time after Lumania or Lemuria. So there is plenty of channeled material about, especially about Atlantis. For now, the most trustworthy description comes from the remote viewing project of the Farsight Institute. It does seem like really a scientific study to me. I sincerely hope they have been honest and have worked under strictly blind conditions. And also the bits of information from Edgar Casey. But we have the tools to recover the full history, even in detail, and as people get more and more interested, they will eventually do it. I don't know if it will happen within the frame of the New Earth project or in some other ways, but the tools are there. We have remote viewing. These are real shamans, I mean people who are really good at it. In the past they were called shamans, but now that word has been so much stained with prejudices and ridicule, and many people have bought those ideas and have become really such strange, dodgy so-called shamans. But the real shamans of the past, they were exactly like the nowadays good remote viewers. So this is being revived and is definitely one of the most powerful tools we have at our disposal. And then the past life regressions. I still don't have any access to such an information, although many thousands of such sessions take place daily. And as the New Earth project hopefully becomes more and more popular, I hope that some past life regressionists will be also attracted and will be willing to contribute data. And as our society matures more and more to the point that it becomes interested in its own glorious past, then we'll become more and more aware how ridiculously stupid is to tolerate all these bans on doing excavation on archaeological sites. That is actually very, very difficult to obtain such permissions. And as people understand that this is not very smart, those bans will be gradually lifted due to social pressure. And then the third powerful tool, actual archaeological excavations, will also contribute to finding out the true history. And as far as the Atlantis and Hyperborea connection, that is one point that I'll surely investigate. There are books that will help. I haven't had time to study it. It is really a lot of study. Probably sometime early next year I will be able to do so. But that could be surely a subject for an interesting second season of The Survivors that concentrates on the older times, because this first season that has just few more episodes mostly concentrates on the most recent remains, traces of the survivors, and proves that there is such thing. But the older stuff will be definitely much more interesting. Hopefully I can reach there. And to give a more exact answer to the question, the survivors, they are, so to say, the last degraded descendants of the Atlanteans and Hyperboreans. Or if not degraded, at least robbed of their technology and their land. A group of people that was chased down by their enemies for thousands of years. Well, many sources say that to take an incarnation on planet Earth is a very brave decision as such, because the theater, the life is a big theater, the theater play, the scenario here is a very turbulent one. I have not seen it for myself, but I have good reasons to believe those who say that on most of the other planets the life is not that challenging, but also the learning there doesn't happen so fast. And those who choose to get born on Earth do it out of desire to graduate quicker from the school of the material environment.
The next question has to do with the remote viewing experiment that Sylvie announced, where she's going to be taking data from anybody who wants to submit it to her, where she's going to give you a target, and you have to remote view it, you send the data in, and of course everybody has to do this in a blind. I mean, if you know what remote viewing is, you can't know what the target is in advance. It defeats the whole purpose. So people send in these blind remote viewing results to her. She looks at all the results she gets. She compares the results to the target. She compares the results to each other, and she tries to see if there's meaningful data here. And if there is, then we can begin to use this as a like a corroborating piece of evidence for remote viewing things that happened in the past. So the question to her is, are you going to make your remote viewing experiment results available in a video?
I'm very glad this topic came up, because this is the big thing happening to me right now. I'm very pleased that the remote viewing project that I started very hesitantly is going well beyond my expectations. I already have two excellent reports on two of the targets with valuable information, and few others that touch the targets as well. I hope many people are working silently at home and will be sending me the results towards the end. There is plenty of time left before the December deadline for submission of the results. And most importantly, the Arvari Academy of Remote Viewing, their website is probablefuture.com. They are in touch with me. They have started working on the targets. It looks well, and hopefully we can make it a long-term connection with them. Because to make even a rough sketch of the world history, that would require exploring hundreds of targets, actually, without even going in the details of various regions, just to get the basics. It is even possible that I don't publish the next episode of the Survivors before the end of the submission deadline in December, because I can't make the targets public before that. But let's see. The reason for which this may happen is that I may want to use some of the information received for the next topic.
The next question has to do with a comment that Sylvie made in a video where she explains flamenco's new chronology. In her videos, Sylvie refers to a civilization that she calls the Survivors. Flamenco, in his work, refers to a civilization that he calls the Russian Holy Empire. Sylvie states that she thinks that this is a misleading name because the culture or the civilization that Flamenco is referring to eventually gave rise not only to the Russian people but also to many of the other peoples in Europe and all over the world. So the question for Sylvie is, do you think that this ancient civilization is the culture that linguists and archaeologists are looking for as the original Indo-European culture?
Again, thank you for bringing up this topic. It's a truly excellent question. Actually, I would label it as an empire only in its latest stages, when countries and empires, the idea of such came into existence. Before that, it was simply a culture. I see the very idea of fencing people within borders as not very nice as such, and people could be convinced into doing it only at the later stages when they degraded enough to buy this. And I hope that this craze will be short-lived as well, and very soon we'll come back to our senses and start respecting each other and living like brothers instead of fencing ourselves with barbed wire. But first we'll need to educate ourselves. Opening the borders tomorrow is not a solution. It will create only chaos. But yes, in the period, probably somewhere in the 13th, 14th century, it was a kind of empire. But calling it Russian, I don't see much truth in that. Because when people hear Russian, they would imagine the Russians as we know them today. Well, many of them could be descendants of them, but so are the many other nations. And I always speak of the Hyperborean regions and have been usually identifying it with Siberia, but lately more and more I tend to think that this Siberia stretches all the way into Alaska and even parts of nowadays Canada. Again, in the very northern parts of these countries nowadays. This will come up in the next few episodes. And as far as the term Indo-European, maybe it is slightly closer to the general idea of the survivors, but not exactly, because they had missionaries all over the world. They left their footprints in almost all cultures on the planet. And the Indo-European was just one of the many, and it seems to be a blend of the original survivors' culture and that of the more or less primitive tribes that they encountered when they decided to spread all over the planet.
Another researcher named Peter Moon makes a connection between the ancient Dacian people in Eastern Europe and the modern people who are Dutch and German, with the Germans calling themselves Deutsch. So the question is, have you ever come across any relation between the ancient Dacians, the Dutch, and the Deutsch, aka Germans?
Well, before even to start discussing the connection between Dacians, Dutch, Deutsch, and etc., we first need to define those terms properly. Well, I wouldn't embark on trying to do that, even to start with. Fomenko makes the case that actually Goths and Slavs are the same people, and if that's true, and is the most reliable version I have encountered so far, this by itself it's such a game changer that we first need to clear the basics before going into details and to clarify the meaning of the words to start with. I'm not sure that this answer is satisfactory, but it is given to the best of my knowledge and honesty.
Can you describe the Jesuit role in the creation of the conventional historical narrative that's taught today?
Well, a group of them was somehow convinced, I don't know, hired or in some other way, made to participate in creating the literature that would form the basis of the fabricated history. Now, this fabricated history is not entirely fraudulent. It does have grains of truth in it, and not only one, many. A very nice example is the Bible, for example. Over there we read about Sodom and Gomorrah and how they were destroyed by military action, fire from the skies, from the enemies, throwing at them balls of sulfur. And it has been confirmed in very recent times that indeed very strange balls of sulfur were raining from the skies, balls that doesn't occur in nature. So we have a very valuable piece of information actually about the wars in the past, the cosmic wars. Now, along with that, there is so much strange material in the Bible, not only contradicting common sense, but also contradicting itself as well. So I think the situation is very similar with many other books that the Jesuits worked on. There is a lot of truth, there is a lot of final touches, but difficult part is to sift the truth from the fabricated decorations. So why did they do it? Who organized them? Were they aware that they are a part of forgery? I have no clue. It doesn't mean that all Jesuits are bad guys. Definitely not. In almost every group of people there will be so-called good and bad ones. I don't want to stain the name Jesuit as such in general, but a group of them were doing that job. And it is not a secret or some sort of alternative version that they were editing the books. It is openly admitted in many places, even by mainstream scholars, that as they were working, they were correcting the old books to make them relevant to the modern, at that time, knowledge, modern versions of whatever they willingly or unwillingly had to accept as normal and true.
The conventional historical chronology that most people understand today is said to have been created around the time period that we know as the 1500s and 1600s, which coincides exactly with the Protestant Reformation. Can you describe the real significance of what is called the Protestant Reformation?
Yes, it seems that at the time of the Reformation, not only the new history, but a new way of thinking was imposed upon the population with military force in a very cruel way. The belief system of the people was degraded and reduced almost to an animal level. And then to facilitate the herding of those animals, of that cattle, that means us. It was all made to look like some sort of a religious movement. I think the new chronology books of Fomenko are the most excellent source of really detailed information on the Reformation period. He goes into great detail about all that. I have included only a small portion of it in the Survivor series, and even that is scattered in at least 3-4 episodes. So I understand it's a bit difficult to find.
This next question is a personal question, but since Sylvie's delved into all of these alternative historical ideas, I wanted to ask her about her religious or spiritual beliefs and how she reconciles the things in the Bible, for example, or the historicity of the things in the Bible, and Jesus in particular, with what she's found from her studies.
Well, I most definitely believe myself that Jesus Christ was an actual historic figure. Actually, never doubted it. I don't know why, but if somebody is asking for a confirmation, that would be again the set books of Jane Roberts. And if the question is what is my personal religion, I don't know how to classify it, but probably the closest would be the New Age idea, although that, as all other religions, has severe problems. I'm aware of them, but initially it was based partially on this very same set material. The set books of Jane Roberts greatly influenced this newborn New Age movement, and although very few people can appreciate the set material properly, still many of the basic teachings of Set did become the bedrock of the New Age movement, and many people I've heard them repeating them even when they do not understand them fully or don't understand them at all. But even that is okay. As we evolve and we become more and more aware of our true nature, the practical understanding will come, and then it won't be just repeating things in a book. People will start experiencing those things and then appreciate the set's teachings and many other genuine teachings even more, and applying them, and like that. That's how the New Age will come to existence gradually. And as far as spiritual beliefs, well, this is extremely general, but after I spent a year and a half, 2 years in the Amazon jungle, after that I have to tell you frankly that I don't feel like human at all anymore. I am clearly aware that I reside in a human body and I try to make the best out of it, but as my very self, I clearly perceive myself as spirit, a piece of consciousness. So it is not something that I believe in or conceive intellectually. It is the way I feel reality.
The next question for Sylvia is, have you looked into any histories of non-Western regions, such as Chinese, Indian, or African history, to see how the traditional history remembered in these kinds of places lines up with the new chronology, or if there's any evidence that the history of these areas has been manipulated as well?
Of course, most definitely, and there are bits and pieces of such observations in the various episodes of the Survivors. This is really a vast subject. A really knowledgeable team of experts would need to work on it for many years to get a comprehensive answer. So what I can offer is minimal at this point.
The rest of the questions in this interview are all from other members of the TOT forum, and the first set of questions comes from our member Ellen. The first question Ellen asks is about another set of material that's been discussed on the TOT forum, and that's the Bach saga. So the question to Sylvie is, does she know anything about the Bach saga?
That is one piece of literature that I have yet to study. Thank you.
The next question from Ellen to Sylvia is, what's the impetus that made you start such a huge project? Were you alone? And if you were with others, how did it all start?
Well, this is a very interesting one for me as well. Probably will be surprised, but at the time I started, I had no idea what am I getting myself into. I had a vague idea something like this would happen at this point in my time, because a very good astrologer made my chart many years ago and told me that at this point I will start some sort of volunteering work for benefiting the humanity in general. She did not say it will be in the field of history, although suggested that it would be somehow connected to spirituality. But sometime in the beginning of this year, when I had the plan to make 4 videos within a week or so, I mean in my spare time, I had no clue what kind of project am I embarking on actually. After I made the first 3 episodes, I realized that I have only covered the topics of what was supposedly meant to be a couple of minutes of introduction. And then I started compressing the material, but still the full thing was not going according to my expectations. It wasn't 4, but over 40 episodes already. And the main thing is that the number of subscribers at that time of my channel started increasing very rapidly beyond my expectation. And the thing is that a lot of letters, I started receiving lots of emails of very sincere people who really wanted to know more about all this. And then I realized it's just my duty to make all these episodes because people want to know. I was supposed to have been doing other things with my life this year, and I had to put those on hold, but well, it is all connected with the bigger story of what is happening in my life, and I will give more details in the autobiography video that I will make at some point, maybe even this year. But to summarize it, I had what seems to be a very short near-death experience some 2 years ago about, and at that time it is very typical for people. It happened to me as well. I had a view of the mission I had when I was born in this time, and this mission is to cultivate certain qualities. This is the mission of everybody, although we concentrate on different qualities in different incarnations or lives that we get born in. And by contributing to the cleansing of our planet from these parasitic influences, I am uprooting various contaminations from my own being. Now, when I say contaminations, that has a very subtle meaning. For example, I may see it as uprooting violence from myself. Now, I'm not a violent person, hitting people or anything like this, and haven't been like this in this lifetime, never. But for me, even getting angry at somebody, even for a fraction of a second, I see this as violence. People nowadays have their notions distorted. I think the universe sees anger as violence, and our cultural conditioning makes us think that there is actually an excuse for it, that it can be justified, that actually sometimes it's good. Well, I don't agree with that. Even a very small, impure thought that is not harmonious and doesn't create beauty and peace around, I see it as a form of very dangerous contamination that not only contaminates my karma but also pollutes the full planet, even when it is not followed by any bad action, and bad again according to our modern standards, which are below any standard, I must say. So by trying to contribute in a humble way to a new beautiful earth, I am at the same time creating my own beautiful self, the way I want it to be, without any trace of any contamination. And when that happens, I will know this is the end of my graduation from the school of the material existence. Synonyms of that would be liberation, nirvana, moksha, kaivalya, and so on and so on. So getting back to my near-death experience, it's not that I didn't know these things before, but after that experience I became much more focused on them, and the details of daily life attract much less of my attention after that episode of my life. It doesn't mean that I avoid interacting with the world around me. Actually, not at all. I'm interacting even more. Just the perspective is quite different.
How do you make the videos on your channel, and how long does it take to make each one?
Well, the way I make them, I had the basic materials ready from the very start. And when I start an episode, I find whatever additional information I can, or as much as time allows me, because every detail can I can delve in every detail endlessly for years. So as much as the time allows me, I gather details and I save the images related to the topics. I put the images in an iMovie project, one after another, in the sequence I would like them to appear, and then I sit and record the audio related to every image. That would take me, well, for a very long episode it would be a full day's work. For shorter episodes, a few hours if I do it continuously. Usually I don't. I mean the recording of the voiceover, and then let's say 2 hours editing. I listen to it once before publishing. I don't read from any text. I don't have time to do that much, to write text and after that read it. That would take ages. I mean, those documentaries that you see on TV, they take teams of people to produce them and months of work. It's much more time consuming that I would have guessed before making one.
Alan's next question for Sylvie is, what's the best part of the next thing you'll be doing?
Well, the best part, well, definitely our future. I'm very optimistic about the future of our planet. Although I think the beautiful times will start in a few hundred years, but this is not set in stone. We can make it happen much sooner also. Doesn't seem we will, but we can.
The next question from Ellen is, what's the toughest ordeal you've had to face?
Do you mean ordeal during making the documentary or in my life as a whole? If it is in my life, I had a terrible sickness for 10 years. I will tell you about that in my autobiography. And if it is About the making of the documentary, yes, it was hell. Probably the first 10 episodes were pure hell, because at that time I bought a new computer. I had to. The old one was really falling apart after years of use, and the iMovie was freezing as I tried to do anything with it. So I got a new one, and that one was worse. Not only the iMovie, brand new computer with excellent specifications, supposedly high quality product, the iMovie was not only freezing, it simply refused to work a number of times. I spent literally days with the support on the phone. We reinstalled the computer number of times, the complete operating system and stuff. Even the last time I was not allowed to import any of my old data, not to transfer the black magic from the old one. So that made it very difficult.
Next question is, what do you like to do when you're not working on documentaries?
Oh well, I like gardening. I like fragrant flowers and try to grow them as much as possible.
Ellen's next question comes from the fact that she said she's heard cat noises or what seemed like cat noises in the background of some of Sylvie's videos. So she asks if Sylvie has a favorite animal.
Yes, I've got two lazy, complacent, domesticated sphinxes here, meowsing during video making and controlling me, sitting on my shoulder, ordering snacks meanwhile. They're both very intelligent and educated felines. They like to work on the computer, and one time during comments approval they read somebody's comment saying lock up your cat while making videos, and at that point they said comments are disabled forever on this channel.
I think this next question is alluding to past life memories, but the question is, do you have personal memories of some of the past time periods on Earth?
Well, who knows? I'll keep this one secret. Maybe something very vague.
The next thing Ellen wanted to know was what keeps Sylvie cheered up.
Even just being alive, feeling who am I, is more than enough usually. I don't feel constant needs of external things to make me happy. The happiest times are during meditation, actually. The more I cut off from external things, the more I can feel from that joy that we're made of, actually. I live a very simple life in a more or less natural area, and relatively ecologically clean, as much as that's possible nowadays. And sometimes when I go to the nearby city, it's like going in some cloud of dirty, smelly fog. And it's like a cloud of vibrations. The air is not polluted there, but it kind of sticks to me. I need a few hours to recover when I come back.
The next question is how Sylvie's been in touch with the team of Russian researchers.
I'm not really sure to which team are you referring to. I have been shortly in touch with Alexander Koltepin and Nikolai Subotin. I have never been in touch personally with Anatoly Fomenko, though. It will be nice to go on an expedition with some of them one day. I would definitely enjoy that.
Ellen's last question is in regards to a series of books called The Ringing Cedars by Vladimir Megre. Ellen writes, I have a sneaking feeling that Anastasia is a survivor who doesn't need to wake up, and that there are others, like her, living in seclusion in remote places. And the question to Sylvie is, what do you think about that?
I should have mentioned that earlier. I left it for the later episodes, but yes, the books of Anastasia seem to be the survivors sending message to us, most definitely. And the message of Anastasia wouldn't be the only one that will cause the awakening, but it definitely starts resonating very strongly in some areas of Russia, and in the future could be one of the main powering sources for the transition to the new Earth. Who knows?
This question comes from our member Ayanawa, and if I didn't say that right, I apologize. And he brings up a people in New Zealand called the Waitaha people, if I said that right. And what Ayanawa was asking is how big of a role these kinds of people play in our transformation back into a civilization at the level of where we were in our ancient past.
Certainly many tribes are still holding on to the old knowledge, the good one. Of course, it will be always to a different degree. One would really need to study them well before giving estimates of to what extent they hold the true old values and to what extent have they lost them. But in terms of making it through the transition, the question that I would ask would be how many of them would really survive, I mean, make it through and not be killed by the possible very turbulent times that we possibly could go through. I myself have never had visions about the future, or at least not detailed and precise ones. But from what I can gather from reliable sources of predictions and prophecies, because there are such that have proven themselves as reliable over time. There will be a full episode, probably the one before the last, of the survivors on exactly this topic. There seem to be a chain of events in the future that would radically reduce the number of the population on Earth. To what scale will that happen? What areas will remain unaffected? This is really... I don't even have an opinion on this topic. I don't know how many of these tribes will still exist in future.
Francis asks Sylvie, will you be making a documentary, bringing all your research together and forming a conclusion?
The episode before the last one will be on the topic of the future with all the prophecies, and then the very last one will be called Conclusions.
The next question comes from LKM88, and again, if I'm not pronouncing this right, I apologize. And he writes, Sylvie, in episode 30 at about 35 minutes and 15 seconds, you touch on the defeat of Pugachev in 1775 being the year the Empire of Tartaria also ended, and that event was quickly followed by July 4th, 1776 Declaration of Independence of British colonies in North America. The presentation gives rise to speculation that the two historic occurrences are related in at least two ways. Number one, that the forces fighting Tartaria had been executing a sort of global plan and are behind the British colonial organization as a part of their overall objectives. Number two, that the influence of Tartaria was widespread enough to be of consequence in the British colonies, and that Tartaria had to be conquered before colonial interests could be further pursued. In your research, do you have further evidence or comments about either of the 2 points above?
Well, thank you for summarizing the episode very well. You grasped the meaning that I implied. Well, about more details, again, this can be found in the work of Fomenko. And more points, no, I don't have at the moment, but they may come up in future. And since you are interested in resources, particularly about this point, if you know Russian, there is a YouTube channel called Dostoyание Planety. Over there they have one video in Russian, and there was some historian, I don't remember his name, but he was referring exactly to an attempt to restore official public documents giving testimony exactly to this fact, America and Russia being one single country in the not very recent past, in the very recent past. And he was telling in detail how when certain historians attempted to go public with such information, some international meeting was summoned again. I don't remember the institutions that took participation in that meeting, but as a result, the very next day after the meeting, by chance, two libraries, the archive, exactly the deepest archive of two libraries, both in US and Russia, caught fire. You know, it is always by chance, and it is exactly in those archives that there was a high chance of still finding documents, because we're talking of times that are basically a few hundred years ago. So there should have been documents about the details of how countries cease to exist and new ones are formed on the basis of what, and so on. Probably the name of the video was what burned in the, I don't know, Union Library, or what was the name of the library, something like that.
And the final question comes from our member Dreamtimer, and the question for Sylvie is, have you looked at languages in your studies? Culture and history are contained in languages. Can you trace the survivors through language?
No, I have not done that in detail, and there are so many parallels that I have heard of even without doing a deep study. An Indian language is almost identical to some sort of West African, and then the Chinese has something to do with the language of the Olmecs, and parallels like that. Intercontinental travel seemed to have been commonplace in the old times. But in terms of detailed study, no, not yet.
So these are all of the questions that we had for Sylvie. I do want to do another interview with her later, once I can personally read through some of Fomenko's work and watch more of her videos and dig more into this new chronology in general. And when we're able to do another interview with Sylvie, of course, we'll take more member questions, just as most of the questions in this interview came from other members of the forum. And I encourage anybody else who's interested in this work to check out Sylvie's videos, check out the sources she's citing. Fomenko is a big one. You can find his work online too. And again, you can find the link to that as well as Sylvie's videos in the video description below. And just dig into this stuff and follow the sources, see where they take you. And actually, when Sylvie mentions one of these old sources in her videos, or when Fomenko references these old sources in his books, you can go to the Internet Archives at archive.org. Or you could also check out Google Books. Google has a lot of these books digitalized as well. And you can look these books up on there, and since they're over 100 years old, you can download them for free. There's no copyright on them. Sylvie's YouTube channel is called New Earth. So if you go to YouTube and type in New Earth and hit search, it should be the first search result. It's a channel, not a video. But if you go to the channel, she has a lot of videos on there. There's over 40 in the Survivor series so far. And if you want to join the discussion on our forum, that's the One Truth Forum, you can find it at jandeane81.com. That's JANDEANE81.com.